Hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube video.
What is this, 2008?
So, if like me, you are quite a big Marvel fan, especially MCU, and if like me, you're a fan of one character in particular, you will have been watching Loki on Disney+. I am literally obsessed with this TV show. It is possibly one of my favourite things I've ever watched. And the more I watch it, the more I've been thinking I have to make some sort of Loki related video. I mean, I can't just sit here and not make one. So I came up with an idea for a project. I've seen lots of people who have made the iconic Loki helmets, and they tend to be like expert cosplayers. I am not an expert cosplayer. I like dressing up from time to time, but I wouldn't call it expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought I really want to give making a Loki helmet a go, but I hadn't seen many people who have tried making a Sylvie helmet. Sylvie is sometimes known as Lady Loki, and what's different about her headpiece is it only has one horn because she uses it as a weapon and one of the horns has been taken off. And the great thing about that is it means I only need to make one horn, which is ideal. So, I'll let you into a little secret. I have actually already finished this project. I know, gotta be transparent. And let me tell you, it was a journey. I decided that instead of making it out of foam or out of modelling clay, or some people who have the resources even 3D print it, I would try and make the cheapest version possible that could be accessible to pretty much anyone. I took inspiration from my role model in life, Neil Buchanan, and I thought, why not try and make a helmet out of paper mache?
This is madness.
It was quite the experience. And so, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my past self and let the paper mache journey begin.
And so it begins. As you can see, I have the finest craft materials of a hairband that cost less than £1 and a piece of cardboard from a delivery that came. And I'm tearing off a bit of the cardboard because I realised I couldn't be bothered to draw a straight line, and so I just ripped a bit off the edge. And what I'm doing here is I'm using masking tape to attach it to the hairband. What's really good about masking tape is it's made of paper, so you'll be able to glue things on top of it and it will stick perfectly. And it's very forgiving as well. If you make a mistake, you can easily take it off again. So I'd highly recommend using masking tape for this project. Next, I had to try and figure out where the horns and the middle bit of the helmet, which is like this piece of decoration, were going to go on the hairband. And let me tell you, I nearly lost my damn mind. I am terrible at maths and I hate measuring things, and I had to ask my mum for help just to help with the measurements because my brain was not doing it. But we got there in the end. I'd say obviously every hairband's going to be slightly different, but you want to find 3 equal spaces, 2 for the horns and 1 for the little accessory bit in the middle. And you can see here, I'm just drawing out that bit separately on another piece of card and cutting out a little triangle to go in the middle of the decoration. Oh, lovely, lovely jazz hands there. I then had this idea that, to be honest, I think you could skip, where just to help me remember where the 2 horns were, I put these little rings that you get on key rings to mark each spot, but I think you could go without that bit. And then I'm just attaching a little bit of wire that I found just lying around the house. But you could also use a wire coat hanger and cut a bit off that if you don't have any wire to hand. And I'm just sculpting that into a very rough horn shape. It really doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to cover it all up. And then what I've done here is I've made these little rings out of cardboard, and I've placed one on either side, again with masking tape, just to give each horn a bit of structure. And although It looks a little bit like some sort of Shrek headband right now. I promise that if you stick with it, it will all make sense. And this was a really good way to just give me some structure to work with. I realised pretty quickly that wrapping newspaper around the wire itself was not going to be strong enough unless I did like 10 layers. And obviously I was a bit pushed for time with the video schedule. So what I did is I made some more of these cardboard loops and I slipped them onto the wire. I think I made 3 of them in the end, and then I carefully masking taped them together so that I had a bit of a basis before I then did my newspapering over the top. And although it's looking a bit scruffy and a bit messy at this stage, that's okay, because obviously you're not going to see any of this. This is just the skeleton ready to be covered up with newspaper. And here is the newspaper. I've cut it up into tiny bits to make it easier to put on. And I'm also squirting out some PVA glue. I've gone with this branded one, but obviously other brands are available. Although I have to say, I did find the PVA glue a little bit too sticky. You kind of need something a little bit wetter. That's what she said. But yeah, it was a bit too sticky. So in the end, I actually went for some leftover wallpaper paste instead. But you could also use flour and water paste. And I'll put a recipe for that in the description. It's literally homemade glue. So if you wanted to keep the expenses really low, or you didn't have any wallpaper paste, that would be your next best bet, I think. I also wanted to add that overall this project really didn't take very long. It probably took about 1.5 to 2 days if you add up all of the time and the time for drying. I would say before you move on to each step, you want to make sure that the helmet is dry to the touch. God, I can't get through this without any weird innuendos. But anyway, yes, make sure all of the glue or the paint or whatever stage you're on is nice and dry before you move on to the next stage. So when I've done paper mache in the past, I've almost always been removing the structure that I'm putting the newspaper on top of, like say if you do it on a balloon. And so I've had to use a lot of newspaper, but for this project you actually don't need to use that much, maybe just 1 or 2 layers. Because again, you don't want the hairband to be too heavy either, and you're not going to take it off the hairband at the end, so don't worry too much about doing lots of layers. And that's what it looked like. I then noticed that Sylvie has this little raised bit of detail on her helmet, and I didn't want to lose that by just trying to layer up the newspaper and not getting a distinct enough shape. So I actually made a separate bit of card, cut to the same sort of size and shape, that I then paper mache'd. I think I did a couple of layers and stuck it on top of the existing helmet, so that you can see that nice defined shape. And you can see that this is after it's dried, what the finished structure looked like. I then went wild and did something I've never tried before. I covered the entire thing in little ripped up pieces of loo roll, using the wallpaper paste again. And this was literally the fiddliest thing I think I've ever done. This is what Neil Buchanan recommended that you do, and I nearly lost my mind. The paper went everywhere, it stuck to my hands, it stuck to everything, but it wouldn't stick to the bloody helmet. But I'm glad I did it because it meant that the paint went on really nicely. You can see that there, what it looks like when it's done. And through a very smooth transition, you can see it when it's dried. And I then covered it in PVA glue so that it would go nice and rock solid. And I left it overnight to dry.
The next day.
Hello! Okay, so it's the next day and this is what it's looking like at the moment. So I've got my phone set up here and I thought I could show you the painting process. I'm quite excited about this bit, although I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work. As much as I love drawing and I love printmaking, painting was always kind of my Achilles heel in comparison. I always found it a bit daunting. So I've got some reference pictures here of Sylvie's helmet. I don't think mine is going to look metal, but we'll see what happens. So the plan is, I've got a few different types of paint. They're all acrylic. So I've got some gold acrylic paint. I've got some metallic, sort of bronze paint. We've got other sort of goldy colours. These are all left over from a project I did for my art GCSE. So luckily I did have those. And then at the end I'm going to varnish it. I'll either use PVA or I might use spray varnish. We'll have to see how I go. But I'm going to start painting now, and I thought we could have a little chat while I do it about Loki, because I have been loving the new series, and I just need to get I need to get some of these feelings out. I'm full of so many feelings about the series. So yes, we're going to do some painting and have a little chat. I've just got a paper plate here, and I'm going to squirt some of the paint out on there now. I hope this will be vaguely satisfying. See me doing some painting. I haven't actually done painting in ages. She's sort of got this like slightly bronzy. Oh my god. Okay. I think it's safe to say that that paint has gone off. I think that might be the end of that paint. Let's try. Oh no, there is some in there. Already. The most professional art tutorial you have ever seen. But anyway, let me move these things around and we can start painting. I've just put some newspaper down, obviously so that I don't make a mess. And let's start painting. I think I'll start with a layer of gold. Let me try mixing some of this bronze and this gold together. You never want to mix too little paint, because then you'll run out halfway through and you might not be able to get the same paint again. Okay, let's try this. So, that's going on really nicely. I'm hoping I'll be able to get a sort of smoothish finish, because I haven't tried using loo roll on top of paper mache before, but that was a Neil Buchanan top tip, and it's given it this sort of rough texture that I'm not entirely happy with. But what I'm hoping is that once it's on my head, it won't be too visible. So, while I'm doing this, let's talk about Loki. I feel like I need to give a history of my Loki obsession to any new viewers. I have loved Loki since I was 13. I am now 20. And if I could go back in time and tell my 13-year-old self wearing her single taken Burden with Glorious Purpose t-shirt that one day there was going to be a whole series dedicated to Loki, I think she possibly would have died. Well, hopefully wouldn't, because then she wouldn't have been able to watch it. I just love him so much, and I was really excited for this series. I never would have thought that I'd like seeing someone else play a version of Loki, because I just feel like that role belongs to Tom. But seeing Sophia Di Martino playing Sylvie has just opened my eyes and my mind up to so many other possibilities with this character. I loved episode 1. It absolutely broke my heart. That scene where Loki is watching Frigga. I should probably say now, there will be a lot of spoilers in this video. So if you haven't watched Loki yet, firstly, what are you doing here? But secondly, you might want to just turn off, because there will be a lot of spoilers. But yes, when Loki's watching Frigga dying and all of the other awful things, I was very emotional. I thought it was such a brilliant scene and such a good introduction to the character, because obviously we were seeing a past version of Loki, the one from 2012, just after the Avengers. He hadn't been through any of the character development that we'd seen in Ragnarok, which is my favourite Marvel film. And so that scene where Owen Wilson, Mobius, gives him access to the tapes of his life was a really good way to catch the audience up, and also to catch Loki up as well, to get Loki up to speed and sort of fast track that character development that had taken so many films. Episode 2 was joyous. I think, although episode 4 was amazing, but we'll get on to that, I think episode 2
might have even been my favourite. It was just so lovely to see Loki being so happy. Like his little face when he was running around after Mobius, like he was a Labrador or something. And it made me really happy to see him being happy. I also love Mobius. I love Owen Wilson. I think he is perfect for the role. I found out yesterday that his name in the comics is Mobius, Mobius, Mobius. Like Mobius M. Mobius, that's his first, middle and last name. I absolutely loved the moment when Tom dries himself off and he goes, and his hair just dries. That is the superpower that I want, right? With all this hair, I want a superpower where I could get out of the shower and just go, whew. Episode 3, I found it a bit underwhelming. And that's a really unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people absolutely loved episode 3. It was my friend Marty's favourite episode at the time. It had some great moments in it. One of my favourite moments was when Loki said that he couldn't sit backwards on a train. Because not only is that very relatable to me, but I love the idea that this man has literally fallen off the Rainbow Road. He's flown through the skies of New York. He's been in numerous spaceships. He's been on the top of Stark Towers. He's been Hulk smashed. But the thought of mild travel sickness is too much to bear. We can't talk about episode 3 without talking about Loki being confirmed as being bi and Sylvie also being confirmed as being bi. And I think that was a really positive moment. I'm finding it pretty hilarious, all of the people that are outraged by this, because obviously those of us who have read the Norse myths know that Loki being bisexual is not a revelation. I actually thought Loki was pansexual, so that was a surprise to me. Although I know that the director Kate Herron is bi, so that representation was no doubt very important to her. But yeah, that episode, apart from those moments, apart from the revelation about the true nature of the variants, which I had heard about on one of the Loki Facebook groups, someone had guessed that that would happen. So it wasn't a surprise, but it was like, okay, this is what's going on. Apart from those moments, I thought, I didn't feel there was enough story. Like it felt really short, and obviously there aren't very many episodes. I think there are 6 episodes altogether. And so I feel like every moment counts, people. We can't be wasting time here. But then we need to talk about episode 4. And at the time of filming, this is the most recent episode. We have 2 episodes left. Tom, in an interview with Ali Plum, who I love Ali Plum, said that episode 4 and 5 were his favourites and the ones that he was most excited for the fans to see. Oh my god. Oh my god. Episode 4 was a journey. I gasped out loud maybe 5 times, maybe 6. So many revelations. So I have a theory, right? I have a theory that when people are pruned, this is based on the end credits scene, they end up in a sort of wasteland for variants. So I think Mobius is out there somewhere. I refuse to believe that he's dead. I refuse. We are going to get a jet ski scene with him and Loki. That will be the after credits scene of the last episode. I will die on that hill that we need that scene, and we need Mobius looking into the camera and going, wow. And then I can be happy. But yes, there were so many good moments. Sif coming back. I loved that scene. My favourite bit in the whole episode was when Loki put his hands on Sylvie's shoulders and said, "This is new to me." That just broke my tiny, tiny heart. Of course, the only person he could possibly fall in love with is himself. He's too narcissistic. And I was just thinking, how perfect would it be if we had it, I doubt it would ever happen, but if we had a scene with Thor and Loki and Frigga, maybe Odin, but I'm not a massive Odin fan. I mean, every time anything happens where he's required to be accountable for his actions, he falls asleep. So, not a massive Odin fan. But how good would it be if there could be a scene where Thor and possibly Frigga could meet Sylvie as Loki's other half? Or Mobius as Loki's other half. I mean, I'm not picky. I loved the moment where the timekeepers were revealed to be animatronics, because I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw them, I did think one of them looked exactly like the Grinch, and I did think, with this budget, they don't really look very real. And then I had egg on my face, and it was all intentional, and I just thought it was such a brilliant reveal. It was like yet another shock that you finally think that you've met the timekeepers and we're going to have this battle, and then what's going on? What even is life? What's happening? We also need to talk about Kid Loki, that after credits scene, which obviously had the original like Stan Lee Loki. We had a sort of crocodile with Loki horns on it. We had a steampunk version of Mjolnir, although I didn't recognise the man that was holding it. And we also had Kid Loki, and I love Kid Loki. Right, so if you haven't read the Gillen and McKelvey comics, I'm liking this gesturing, do it. The Young Avengers, Gillen and McKelvey, was the first comic that I absolutely fell in love with. I was obsessed with it. But yes, Kid Loki is an absolute joy. I just love him. He's such a brilliant character. I would love to see the Young Avengers be made into a series or a film. I just think it's begging to be adapted. It was such a good comic and the characters are so brilliant. Surely we need to make that happen. Okay, I'm more or less done. But I think from a distance, that would look okay. That actually looks much better than I thought. Yeah, I think that would look okay. Have faith in yourself, Anna. So anyway, I can see that the postman's at the door. And I'm talking to myself and he's probably looking at me. So we're going to let that dry and then I'll probably come back and add some further details afterwards.
And we've reached the home stretch. To be honest, this is probably the part where I had the most of a mental breakdown. Because as I've said before, painting isn't something that I consider a really big strength of mine, and I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, but I made the best of it. You can see I've used some acrylic markers here, some of my Posca pens, some paint. I was just going with whatever I felt like in the moment, really. Throwing everything at it, and trying to make the middle bit look more like a defined shape. I've even put some Sharpie on here. I don't know why I did that. That was a terrible idea. I think I was once again trying to emulate Neil Buchanan, and he always seems to whack a bit of Sharpie on everything, but that didn't work. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. Although it did add some shading, I had to cover it all up and try and rub it off, and it was all a bit of a disaster. Also, please note the use of 2 cups. This is crucial for this project because every single time you leave it to dry or you've got awkward bits and you're trying not to touch the paint or the glue, you need something to lean it on. So definitely have 2 cups. Yeah, you can see, again, I'm trying to make the best of it. At this point, I really thought I'd ruined it. But I have to say, I do think it all comes together in the end. So maybe that's a good tip. Just keep going at it until it looks all right. And then I decided to spray it with some enamel spray. I promise I'm not giving my dog carbon monoxide poisoning, but it turned out all right in the end. I then proceeded to film a big reveal segment. And I think from the following footage, you can tell that it felt a lot cooler in my head. Oh
dear, this is all just a bit of a disaster. Honestly, sometimes I wonder why I put footage of myself on the internet. Oh, especially that. Okay, that's enough of that.
Ta-da! So, here is the finished headpiece. It's not as awful as I thought it would be while I was making it. I have to say I was having a bit of a crisis. It's not as brilliant as I thought it would be either. Like, I would really love it if it could have been a bit smoother, but I'm not sure you're ever going to get that texture realistically with paper mache. I want to say I really enjoyed making it. In reality, it was quite stressful. I have so much respect for cosplayers who do this properly all the time. Also, do you like my jumper? I kind of made it. I got the jumper off Depop and then made this little icon to go on it. But yes, I love it. The helmet's over there deliberately so I can wear it with dungarees, because as you know, I am always in dungarees. But yes, I'll be honest, I am quite happy with this. I don't think it's terrible. It's not brilliant, but for me, who doesn't make cosplay props very often, and this is brand new to me, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And it cost me literally nothing. You know, I mean, I did have the paints already and I did have glue, although you could make the glue out of flour and water paste. The only thing I got was a hairband, but I wanted a hairband anyway, and they came in a pack of 3. So I'm quite pleased with it actually. The more I look at it, the less awful I think it is. I think if you see it from a distance, that makes the whole thing a bit better. But anyway, let me know in the comments if you've been watching Loki. Please let me know if you have any theories for what's going to happen in episode 5 and 6, because I am literally on tenterhooks. I cannot wait. I'm counting down the days, but then at the same time I don't want it to end. Also, let me know if you'd like to see more make videos. Hopefully I will get better with practice. Please don't come for me if you're a cosplaying expert, because this is a first attempt and I don't think it came out too badly. I think it's all right. It's very primary school craft session chic. If you enjoyed this video, you can give it a like and you can also hit subscribe, but only if you fancy. I hope you have a lovely week and I hope you enjoyed witnessing my slow descent into artistic madness. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye!